Hi, I'm Harold Bell. And first, I would like to introduce you to the team of Speak the Truth. Gary Johnson is the CEO and publisher of BlackMenInAmerica.com and the facilitator for Speak the Truth. The Black Men in America website is ranked number 5 out of 500 Black websites on the internet. Our political analyst and commentator is Christopher C.J. Johnson. Rounding out the team are veteran pioneer television broadcaster, producer, actress, and former Sirius XM talk radio host, Miss Maggie Linton. Jackie Jones is a veteran newswoman who has written for the Washington Post, New York Times, and the Baltimore Sun. She was once a producer for my sports talk show, Inside Sports. Presently, she is the assistant dean for programs and chair of the Department of Multimedia Journalism at Morgan State University. Our supporting team will introduce themselves. Well, we'll throw it back to of course, my man, the facilitator, until we can find out where Mr. Kimbrough is. He's not with us yet. Gary, I'm gonna throw it back to you.
All right, this is how we do it live on Zoom, I guess. Well, we're going to start off and see what we have. You know, one of the big things is people are still talking about last week and the power of the vote and getting out there with the vote. I thought that was a great show. CJ, from your perspective, what did you think about the Mr. Stroman last week?
I thought it was great information. As you said, the voting process can get a little muddled and confusing. So to have somebody break down, you know, mail-in voting, and there's been a lot of misinformation given out by the president, especially in terms of mail-in voting. So just to get the straight lowdown, very helpful, very informative.
Okay. All right. I see the sheriff is here. I see the sheriff is coming in here. Welcome, Sheriff. My name's Gary Johnson from BlackMenInAmerica.com. I'm going to hand you over to our host, Mr. Harold Bell.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Those who know me are well aware of my ties to Winston-Salem State University and his legendary coach, Clarence Big House Gaines. It is a legendary story that saved my life. First, I would like to thank my extended family in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, for referring our guests to me. First, my homegirl, native Washingtonian, Miss Peggy Chapman, and my big brother and sister, Vic and Connie Johnson. I have often claimed the city saved my life. Today, we're going to travel back down Tobacco Road to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I cannot believe it's been 60 years. Our guest for today hails from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He is an author, speaker, and an expert consultant in leadership, security concepts, and safety measures. He is also aware the relationship between police officers, excuse me, and the Black community cannot survive on Band-Aid or chemotherapy type solutions. Healing is systemic. He is the author of Surviving the Stop. He thinks it is a brilliant start to dialogue that must take place to begin the healing process for the nation. In fact, as a retired senior special agent with the U.S. Department of Justice, he provided safety and security details in the aftermath of the 1996 Olympic bombings as the September 11 terrorist attacks. In Surviving the Stop, he reveals to you simple yet powerful thoughts and actions that help citizens and law enforcement officers achieve the ultimate goal, to make it home safely. I would like to welcome to Speak the Truth, Sheriff Bobby Kimbrough. How you doing, Sheriff?
I'm good. I appreciate you, sir. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. It's an honor.
Thank you. Thank you, Bobby, for taking time out. Sheriff, I want to get this started by saying, when you left the Justice Department and the DEA, and you headed back home to Winston-Salem, and instead of taking a break, you jumped back into the frying pan and ran for sheriff. What made you jump back into the frying pan, Sheriff?
Well, when I retired, I had just finished up my second book, Surviving and Stopping. I was traveling around the country talking about the book throughout the United States. I was working with Judge Linda Hatchett. She was the lawyer on the Castillo case. I consulted with her on several of the police shootings. And so on one of my trips back home, I ended up talking with Walter Holden, who was the United States attorney appointed under the Clinton administration. And he asked me what was I going to do with the rest of my life. And I said, I'm considering getting into politics and I want to run for the office of sheriff. And I decided that I was going to run for sheriff because that's what I've spent my life as a servant, serving and protecting. And I talked to several people, several of my mentors who I value their opinion. And you have to be careful who you listen to because sometimes people will tell you what you can and cannot do. And everyone that I talked to told me that I could not win. You know about Winston. Winston-Salem is one of the fourth largest cities in the South, in North Carolina. They've never had an African-American sheriff before. I didn't have the money. The gentleman that I ran against was the incumbent for 16 years. And so everyone told me it couldn't be done. It couldn't be done. That's why I say you have to be careful what people tell you cannot be done. And so one of the things that I've learned over some of the hardships and some of the midnights that I've been through is I always go to my closet and close the door and pray and spend the night in my closet some nights. And I'll never forget that particular night I was sitting in the closet just thinking about it. And it came over me that it could be done. And so I decided I was going to run. And so I put my name in the hat, used some of my own funding to get going. And God delivered. We won by a landslide. And so I became the first African-American sheriff in this county, a population of about 40,000. I don't say I manage, but I work with 640 men and women here. I manage a $65 million budget. And I manage from the position that we are stronger together. One man doesn't make all the decisions. I take the advice of the men and women that sit at the table with me. I never sit at the head of the table because I believe that when you start to do that, leadership can't grow organically when you put your thumb on people. So I manage from what I call a Robin Hood approach, a round robin table. And so I got into politics and I won, and we've done some amazing things here. We've done things that have yet to be done anywhere in the country. We have our own podcast system. We have our own news outlet, our own sheriff news outlet, which we release every Friday. We have our own podcast. We have a radio show where we do Black and White, Can We Just Talk? The Weekend Review. We discuss issues locally, nationally. We are doing things that haven't been done in this county or in this state before. And so I like to think, and I thank the people that have supported me to get to this place. And so I've met a lot of amazing people since coming into office. And what I've learned is that of all the things that I have learned in the 2 years that I've been sitting here, people say, well, what it would be one of the greatest attributes? And I say, you know what is so amazing about this? I've been everywhere from the White House to the Liquor House. I've studied everywhere from Harvard to elementary. Regardless of the degrees I hold, I'm a year shy of my PhD. But one of the most humbling things that I always remember is humility. Regardless of where I may ascend to, I keep my feet on the ground. I pray every day. We begin every staff meeting in this building. We begin with prayer. Because all the things that you said about me, I couldn't have done it without God's favor. I couldn't have done it without His blessings. I'm just a Black man. Out of all those things that you talked about me, I'm still a Black man in America. I'll be Black when they lay me down to rest. And so I always try to remain humble. I was running a few minutes late. The Chief Justice for the state of North Carolina, Chief Justice Beasley, invited me to speak for her at one of the rallies that she was having. And I told her that I had to leave because I had a commitment with you. And I am humbled that people see things in me that God had revealed to me years ago. And I say that because I haven't always been a God-fearing man. Sometimes tragedy has to take place in a man's life or a woman's life before they realize some things. In 2005, I lost my wife. In losing my wife, it humbled me because in losing my wife, I lost my home. I'm not ashamed to talk about it now. I've talked about it all over the country. My house went into foreclosure. A lot of things happened to me in 2005 that humbled me. And so in that time frame, I became a single parent trying to raise my children off a limited income. I got to know what the dollar menu was like. I got to know what counting pennies was like. And so I never forget from whence I've come. And every decision that I make, I always remember that there go I, had it not been for the grace of God. And so anytime someone thinks enough of me to ask me to be present, I make sure that I can do that. And so here I am to talk or answer any questions that you may have.
All right. Gary Johnson, take it from there.
Let me unmute. Sheriff, your story is quite impactful. I guess one of the things I'd like to know is, what is the number one thing that you can share with us as a community that we need to know to help us be more effective, or help you all, the police and law enforcement, be more effective with community policing? What do we need to tell folks? What do we need to know?
Well, here's one of the things that I say all the time is that you got to be involved in the community in which you serve. You can't. One of the things that coming in here being Black was that you got to have community credibility. The community has to believe that you're credible. The community has to believe that you're trustworthy. The community has to believe that there's an issue, you will address it. And so one of the things that we have done and how we have gotten involved with the community, we have built playgrounds in this community. In other words, we have raised the funding for playgrounds to be built. Prior to the pandemic, the school system allowed me to come in every Thursday and teach school for 2 hours at one of the low performing elementaries. And so when you put yourself in the community, when there's an issue, the community says, I can trust him because he has shown his trust before the trials and the tribulations. And so most of it made national news. We had a death inside the jail here in Forsyth County. And when there's a mistake, I was the first one to say that mistakes were made. We took ownership of that. We're one of the only cities that didn't have rioting, and we didn't have a window broken, but yet the death occurred here. And I think that when the community trusts you, that eliminates a lot of that. And during the protesting, I met with the protesters. I walked with them. You can't shut or silence people up. You can't. And I say this all the time. Before I was all of these things, I was a Black man. And when I'm no longer here, I'm still going to be Black. I still get my hair cut in the same barbershop in the hood. I still go and sit, talk, and cut up. When people see me, I'm still Bobby. I'm still little Bobby to them. Even though I have traveled the country and traveled the world, I'm still home. This is home to me. And I carry myself like that. And so what I would tell anyone that go knock on the police chief door, the sheriff's door, get involved, demand to know what they're doing. Every quarter, we hold town hall meetings here. In other words, I go to the public and say, what do you see in me that I need to fix or correct? And I tell them, here's what's happening in our communities. So for an example, there are so many social issues that become criminal issues in our community, especially in our brown and Black communities. So for example, when you have low unemployment, low literacy rate, and you have, which leads to drugs, which leads to gangs, when we can't provide those things that, as Maslow talked about the hierarchy of needs, when you can't provide food, clothing, and shelter, people are going to get those things, whether they get them from you, or whether they get them from forming illegal groups, gangs, or whatever. And so what I believe is that you have to be a part of that which you want to serve or transform. You can't transform nothing that you're not a part of, and transparency is not present. So as a community, the community here knows that if they call me, I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing and sit down and talk with them. My door swings on welcome hinges. My executive assistant, she's probably gotten used to it now, but at first, you know, Sheriff, you meet with everybody. I do, from the homeless man to the billionaires that are here, because everybody has a voice here. Everybody has a say. You know, I'll bring them up in this room and we'll sit and we'll talk. I don't run from controversy. A good leader does not run from controversy. You can't satisfy everybody. You're not, but everybody needs to be heard. And because by sitting here, when we had the protest going on with Mr. Neville's, John Neville's, you probably can Google it and research it, John Neville. And when people saw how we handled that, we first realized that there was a mistake made. The families, when you go and research that, you will see that the family stood with me. The family stood with me. Nowhere else have you seen that in America when there was a incident involving police and a family, that they came and stood with the police. Because when the life, none of us are perfect. The life that we live, mistakes are going to happen. But when mistakes happen, you can't engage in what I call cover up. You can't engage in surround the wagons. You can't. You have to speak the truth. And in that instance, hey, mistakes were made against the advice of lawyers. What I tell them all the time is, what I love about this job. See, the police chiefs are selected. Sheriffs are elected. I answer to the people and God. I answer to the people every 4 years, and I answer to God every day. A police chief has strings attached to them, whether the city manager, the city alderman, or somebody's pulling their strings. This is the first job that I've ever had in my life. As a special agent, I had to be careful what I said, because if I spoke against the government or discussed classified top secret information, I could be arrested and fired. As a police officer, I could be fired for conduct unbecoming. But this job here that I have, and I look at it not as a job, but as an assignment. I retired from a job, but this assignment that I have right here, I have the ability to speak the truth. I take the advice of 4 or 5 lawyers, but at the end of the day, they don't pull no strings. What I say does not affect whether or not I get fired or not. The people have the ability to fire me every 4 years. During that 4-year time, when I do nothing illegal, I'm here. So when there's an incident, I don't engage in what's black, what's white, what's political. I engage in what is right. And long as I walk that line and speak the truth, I rest well at night.
Jackie?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, Sheriff, the state commissioned a study, state of North Carolina, that looked at the disproportionate minority contact of juveniles with the law enforcement system. And according to that study, Black youth were more likely to be referred for detention than other types of adjudication. And I wanted to know what kinds of things you've been doing in Forsyth County to address that disproportionality. Of
course. So, Ms. Jones, it's a great question. You could probably go across this country and see that police have more contact with Black and brown people, arrest, than they do of any other people. What happens in life is, or what happens in the system that we are living in, is that racism is still real. How I see you will determine what I do to you, what I say to you, and how I treat you. We have yet to be seen equal. That hadn't happened yet. So when people see us as people of color, they don't see us as equal. In law enforcement, you have a culture in law enforcement. Make no mistake about it. Like there's a culture in teaching, a culture in the pulpit. Every profession has a culture. So what we have done to break that culture is this: holding people accountable. In other words, that if you stop somebody out here, you better have a doggone good reason why you stopped them. Not cause of what color car they driving, how they look, none of that matters. You better have a very good reason. The other thing that we have done is that we have engaged in the community. Because what happens is when my officers, deputies, I ask them every month, submit the number of hours you have volunteered. I can't make you do it, but I could, but I don't. I suggest that you go and volunteer in the community, whether it's at the homeless shelter, whether it's at the Salvation Army. So what happens is we're engaged. We have what we call a community outreach division within the sheriff's office. So there's 640 something people that work here, something like that. I don't know the exact number. So we engage in the community. And by engaging in the community, it starts to shape how people see people of color. Because you realize it, in every town across America, the people that serve in the uniforms, they don't live in the communities in which they serve. They have very limited contact. In the Black community, we have, I don't care where you go in America, and I have been every major city in the United States, from Maryland to DC. As Black people, we have our own culture. We have our own swagger. We have our own way of greeting one another. You know, even how we hug when we greet versus how you doing. We embrace each other. And so what I'm saying is that you have people serving in the community, they don't even understand the community in which they serve. In other words, Bernie, the comedian Bernie Mac said it best. We use the word sometimes MF for so many different, that's my MF, but then depending on how the tone we put behind it has a whole different meaning. And so we as people of color, we are very sometimes animated, loud, but that don't mean we finna go to blows. So sometimes the police might roll up on us, and many a times they take that the wrong way, which creates a confrontational stop. And so many times when I'm out on the street, and I stop cars myself if I see something going on, right? And I see young brothers out there, and I chit chat with them, I talk with them. Everything is not an arrestable situation. A police officer has discretion, every powers. He can give you a verbal warning, a written warning, a citation, right? And so I think that what we have done here is engage the community. That is key. You must engage the community way before you need them. Engage the community like being a part of the community. We go to birthdays, like say for example, during this COVID-19, we take birthday requests. So when people in the community are having birthdays, we send several cars out to their house and just cut the blue lights on and blow the horn to celebrate their birthday. For example, in the community, we have fundraisers in the community. Like say the community has a need for a playground. We conduct a fundraiser in the community. We host cookouts. We ask our guys to volunteer to adopt a school. We adopt schools in the community. And it's always the low performing schools where we provide not only sweat equity, like I'll give you an example. We adopted North Hills Elementary, which was the lowest performing school in this county. There's about over 60,000 students as a part of the Forsyth County school system. But there's one particular school, elementary school, that had the lowest performing grades. It is 99% African-American school. We adopted that school. Within 2 weeks, we raised $50,000 for that school to use for supplies. Then I contacted Chris Paul, who is from Winston-Salem, his father Charles, and I went to school together and said, look, I've raised $50,000. What will the CP3 do to match me? And they said, I'll tell you what we'll do, Kimbrough. We'll come in and provide shoes for every student in that building. They did just that. Then I went across the street. You can't see it, but right across the street is a law firm called Wumble, Bond, and Dixon. Pretty powerful law firm in North Carolina. I said, listen, I teach school every Thursday there. I have a group of young men that have never been outside of Winston-Salem. I want to take them to DC on a plane ride. They said, you know what? We'll write the check. And so by engaging the community at different parts of the community, my men and women, they see the people that they stop and the people that they engage. Do some research on this, Ms. Jones, because I don't want you just to take me at my word. 2 years ago, when we came in, we didn't have the schools. In other words, they call SROs, school research officers. The city had those. We came in and took the school system over. And as a result of that, the prisoner pipeline, the numbers have been reduced not only in half, but about 3/4. Because we don't get into, see, I can engage you. A kid could be misbehaving in school. Give you an example. A kid could be misbehaving in school. The teacher calls, send me the SRO down here. The SRO goes down there, and depending on how he addresses that student might say something to him. That student might cuss him out. That student might even swing on him. So now you got conduct, disorderly conduct, assault on an officer and all that. But now, if I send a guy into that room and I talk to that young man like he's a relative of mine, I just diffused that situation. I just took that kid from a whole nother place and brought him here. And so we do that by matching the SROs with the school. Every high school, even in DC or Maryland, every school has its own culture. In other words, there's some schools in your school system that is predominantly white, that comes from a wealthy part of the county. Then there's some inner schools. Each one of those schools has a different personality. So the SRO, the school research officer that you send to that school, has to be mindful and understand the school system in which they're going into. And so we match our SROs with the schools that they're going into. So for example, one of the schools here that has the higher population of Hispanics. So one of the SROs there is Hispanic and fluent in Spanish. So you have to engage, to recognize that there's a problem. There's so many problems that we don't want to address. We address them at the fruit level rather than at the root level. And as long as we keep addressing them at the fruit level, they keep growing. So this issue with us coming in contact with law enforcement, we've got to realize, why is that? What is happening?
Okay, Christopher?
All right, hey, Sheriff. I had a question about how we could replicate some of these great initiatives that you mentioned on a wider scale, because I love some of the things that I've heard coming out of your department, but the issue I think a lot of, especially the millennials, have with, and how discouraged they are with police reform, is what one county embraces is not a blanket national policy. So we could end up in the next county and end up in a totally not as fortunate situation to deal with officers who have not been trained in such tactics. So just from a millennial standpoint, people are really discouraged with the system as a whole, although encouraged by, individual departments here and there. But what advice would you give us in terms of what would be an effective route to reform and what would be an effective route for the activists to take? So
here's what you should do, right? So we initiated with the governor and the attorney general's office here, Executive Order 1545, basically is a commission of accountability. Here's what you do. In every state in the United States, the most powerful office in that state is the AG's office when it comes to law enforcement. He is the top cop in the state, the AG, right? So what you do is you push to have accountability from the AG's office to the rest of the cities in that state. So for an example, get this. So let's take Winston-Salem. So let's say you coming through Winston-Salem and you have an issue, you get stopped or whatever. So you file a complaint with internal affairs of that local department. You with me? So with an accountability out of the AG's office, that same complaint is now generated in the AG's office. You with me? So the AG's office has to investigate as well, because the local police department, because I know my officers, there could be, okay, we're gonna write this one off. But the AG's office doesn't know the guys at the local level. So now once the investigation is done at the local level, it has to come to the state level where they look it over to make sure that the procedures were followed and what was the action. And so let's say that officer transfers. The system that you have now is he could leave and go to another city next door and it never background check. But with a commission of accountability, before he leaves and before he can be hired in another city or another state, they have to communicate with the AG's office and say, hey, what is the record of this guy? Does he have a file in the AG's office? Something as simple as that would change the game. Another thing that would change the game. No law enforcement agency in the country does this, not even us. And they say because money, but the federal government does this. Every 5 years, an agent, a special agent, has to go back through a psychological, background check, financial, everything, right? Every 5 years, the human brain is changing. Every 5 years, as a young brother, CJ, you look like you might be 22, 23. 5 years from now, brother, you won't be the same man 5 years from now. Your whole thought will have changed. The same things take place in law enforcement. The guy that you hire as a rookie, 5 years from now, when the guy coming out of rookie school, he's been taught with integrity. He's by the book guy, but now you send him off to a training officer, right? So now he has to adapt, and he become culturalized to an agency. So 5 years from now, that guy or woman ain't the same person. There's no what I would call accountability. How do you say, let's check this person? Once you come on the job, nobody comes back and periodically check you. There's no customer service being done to make sure that you still fit to do the job. But every 5 years, the federal government puts you through the same process that it took to hire you as an 1811 for the federal government. Every 5 years, you go back through that. So get this. So I could be this guy that when I put my uniform on, I'm by the book. Now I go home to my Facebook account, right? And I get to talking reckless. Who am I? Am I the guy that's straight laced, or am I the guy on Facebook that say, yeah, he got what he deserved of all that? But if you had something in place every 5 years where you sent officers back through the same process that it took to hire them, that would weed out any of that tomfoolery. Because every 5 years, people are changing. No agency in the country does that, except for the federal government.
Oh,
Okay.
that's fantastic. Juanita, are you there? Juanita?
Yeah. Hi.
Okay.
Hi, Sheriff Bobby.
How you doing?
I'm fine. I'm totally amazed that that you have been able to meet your calling, basically. I mean, you had a professional career and then you decided to run for elected office. But I'm sitting here thinking that you're in a really unique position as every other sheriff that gets elected. Because you're right, you answer to the people. You're not a puppet to any particular corporation or political group. And in that sense, it makes me wonder if every law enforcement system should be led by someone elected. And the reason why I say that is because in a lot of, as you well know, in a lot of cities where we've had incidents with law enforcement in the community, when it came to holding them accountable, you had the influence of federal order police, you had the influence of corporations, you've had the influence of politicians, and those influence were a deciding factor in what the consequences would be for those officers if in fact they were wrong. And understand, I'm clear that every incident is not a police, every situation is not, when a police and the community involved does not say because the police was involved that they're automatically wrong. I'm real clear about that. I mean, everybody has to, be accountable for their behavior, but it's been a lot of it. And then I don't know, I don't operate on stats, unfortunately, so I don't know how much of it was going on before the cell phones came along with the cameras, and it became very visual to everybody that we were being under a lot of sadness as a result of interactions with the police, and deaths have been, killings have happened, and all kinds of things. So I guess my question to you is, I heard you say about the AG and as being the top cop, and starting from the top. Sometimes it's good to start from the top, I guess. But what other things can we do to start to create a cycle of influence over the federal order of police, over the economic, the money backings of different groups? Because, we as Black people, as I see it, we starting off on the bad foot. We haven't gotten to a point where we have organized money, where we have unified money and powerful, influential Black organizations that can do what you know, organizations like the Federal Order Police can do. They pull a lot of strings. They have a lot of clout. So I guess it's like I'm sitting here saying, with all the things that are going on, this is really important. But where do we start? Because you're doing it. You're doing so much in your community. I mean, that I love the fact that you guys are working with the schools. Y'all have a community-based department there that reaches out to the community. I mean, you go in and you teach and you humanize yourself to the community. You know, you're not just a cop or a blue suit or you're a human being. You're Officer Bobby or Sheriff Bobby. So yeah, I would love to know if something exists, or if you have suggestions or something that I can maybe be a part of on a grassroots level in my community to create some momentum with that, because this is so cool. I've never heard a sheriff or a police chief ever say that they recognize that they are accountable to the community because they were elected, and therefore that's who they're accountable to. It just seems like, even, it's just, I don't know what I'm saying, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So,
do you get me?
I do. So one of the things that I have learned, because this politics thing was real new to me as an agent. This was a whole new world to me. What I have learned is that there are 7 commissioners. When I came here, it was totally different. But what I learned is that everything that I wanted, I asked for publicly. Because when I asked for it publicly, the same people that's going to vote whether or not to give me the money, the commissioners, they knew they had to answer to the public, because they knew they were elected officials as well. And so what I learned is that money is key. Money moves the world. It does. I can tell you that my commissioners have given me everything that I have asked for, because I don't ask for nothing for myself. I ask for the community. You would look foolish not giving me money for children in the community. You would look foolish not giving me more deputies to make the community safe. You would look foolish not giving me the things that I need to protect the community. And so that's the beauty that I like about this. But what I would tell you is that we've had protests here in Winston-Salem. We had several protests, right? And I would get out there and protest with them. If you'd have called me about 2 o'clock, I was over at Winston-Salem State at Souls to the Pole, dancing off of Jay-Z. They got Souls to the Pole. They got a DJ. I was over there in the street dancing with the Chief Justice, who just happened to be the first Black Chief Justice of the state of North Carolina. And so you have to be a part of that, of the community. But what I would tell you, what affects people is money. So let's say, for example, you don't like something that's happening. If you stop spending your money there and enough people stop spending their money there, you got their attention. Wow. What I have seen in our communities, we will protest for a little while or perform for a little while, but then we go away. But meanwhile, while we protest, and we still spending our money. If you want to get my attention, I love Mountain Dew. I think this is my addiction. I don't know what they put in these things, but I've been addicted to Mountain Dews for about 30 years. I'm 59, but I've been addicted to these things for about 30 years of my life. I don't know what it is, but I promise you, if enough people stop drinking Mountain Dews and buying them, you got Mountain Dew's attention. If enough people say, I don't like this logo, they'll change it. But as long as you keep spending your money, you can say what you want to, but if you're still spending your money with me, we don't really, how much are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to close your wallet up? I mean, that's what we missed the line at so many times. Money moves this country. Money. Do you know something that I don't know maybe, you know what? I'm going to say this. When we protest and we break stuff up, where we break it at?
In our community.
Exactly. They got insurance for that. They got insurance for that. In other words, they might not even open it up for a while because they're getting paid for it to be closed. That's what the insurance do. Right? But guess what? You didn't hurt them. You didn't. But if you want to hurt, stop spending money and see what happens. You got my attention then. You ain't get my attention because you burnt the building down. When I get tired of you burning, I got a whole army that'll squash that. They do. You want to stop spending money. We spend money with people that don't really care about us. We do.
Right. Right. That's right. Sheriff, I want to ask you this, back to me now. I was impressed because when I read your history, man, it included young people. And forever, I've been saying children first. Politicians always say children first until they get into office. Then they go the other way. So when I saw you with all these young people, I told Vic, man, I need to hook up with Bobby because I know Bobby's out there trying to do the right thing if he's about the kids. Tell us how important are young people to you and what you do?
Let me tell you something. You know, I've made some mistakes in my life. I have 7 boys. 7. What I realize is that my boys teach me something every day. Young people teach me something every day. There's a young activist named Frankie Giss here. He's 24 years old, 24, 25, something like that. The young boy is strong. He got a following of about 4,000, 5,000 he can assemble just by, I need y'all to show up. I saw that young man speaking one day. He was stumbling and bumbling. And I said, you know what? I'm going to find him. They had him on a United Way press conference. He was speaking about something. He's one of my mentees now. Love the kid, right? We missed the mark. None of us are here forever. It's what's coming behind us. I bring young kids into this office all the time and take pictures with them, set them in the sheriff's desk. We've got to realize that's the future, our kids. And I say this all the time, where do you get a chance to talk to the future while standing in the present? In other words, if I'm talking to some young kids, I'm standing in the present while yet talking to the future. If you silly enough to don't realize that you have the ability to affect the future by talking to them young kids, you done lost your mind. Mm-hmm. And I realized that when that young man said, Mr. Kimbrough, he said, some of the OGs want to talk to you, right? I said, what do they want me to come to? They said they want you to come to the house. I said, okay. I told a couple of my guys where I was going, but I'm going by myself, right? You can't be afraid of a kid, of a young gen. If you're afraid of them, you might well go to the house, lock the door, and never come back out again. And when I went and sat with them young brothers, you know what they wanted to know from me? They said, yo, we know you coach football, we know you do this, but we got one thing for you. And I'm gonna quote them. Is you gonna make that shit right about the man dying in the jail? Tell us what happened. That's all they wanted to know, right? And guess what? I said to them, mistakes were made. We're putting things in place to make sure these mistakes don't happen again. We're asking to update some of our technology. We're asking to do this, and we're asking to do that. And I left. Frankie told me, Mr. Kimbrough, he said, I'm glad you went. Because what you don't realize is that there's a population of young brothers and sisters that don't mind raising hell. don't mind, as they say, busting triggers. They looking for a reason to fight. They looking. Anytime you can talk to them, you got a chance to shape the future. If you listen to this, during 9/11, they sent us back up to Quantico, and I consider myself a pretty sharp guy, but I realized I really wasn't that sharp. And they started explaining the atmosphere, the different levels of the atmosphere, the exosphere, the mesosphere, the triosphere, and all the different levels of the atmosphere. And they talked about how at each level something takes place differently. So for an example, a commercial plane, a helicopter can't fly where a commercial plane flies. A commercial plane don't have the ability to fly where a fighter jet flies. A fighter jet don't have the ability to function at the same level that the satellites function at. But at each level, you have the ability to affect change. In other words, this room right here, we got it set up for a podcast. Tomorrow morning, it's a conference room for a meeting. Guess what? It's the same room. We just changed it and changed the atmosphere. Your house, what you in now, if you change a few things, you do different things in it, right? But what's a fact? What's a fact? Like when you walk in the church and the pastor dons the pulpit, the atmosphere changes. The praise team, a football game, the cheerleaders, the band. Anytime you start affecting the atmosphere, you can affect the outcome. What I'm saying is, we've got to realize that we have the ability to affect change. We just got to be courage enough to enter the atmosphere. If you ain't willing to get in out there and be a gladiator, if you ain't willing to get into the game and to change the atmosphere, if you're going to be a cheerleader, then cheer. But in order to affect what's happening, we've got to get in the game and make some changes. We didn't just get this just didn't happen overnight. This thing was happening over years. We got to hear over years. And what happens is the decisions that you make in life bring you to a place. But here's what's key to that though, right? Mm-hmm. The crises are going to reveal who you are. The crises that we're in right now are going to reveal who we are. Bottom line. I don't want to know how good a man do in times of peace. Tell me what he gonna do in times of famine, when sugar turns to something else. That's when you know who you're dealing with. So you gotta realize that at this stage of the game that we're in now, we gotta involve the millennials. There's some power in we, not in I. The power is in we.
That's right, Bobby. That's right. We get down to the closing time here. I'm going to go back to Garrett. I want everybody to take a short minute or two. If you got another, some insight or questions for Bobby, I want everybody to take a minute or two. Garrett?
I'm a former federal special agent, Sheriff, so I know about the 1811.
Exactly.
I know about the 5 years. I used to do those investigations, and you're
exactly.
right. People change. And so you come on as an agent and things happen. You know, we're nothing. I used to always say when I teach agents, we're nothing but a microcosm of society.
That's it.
Just because we got a badge and we have these accesses doesn't mean we're not human. And people go home to different lives. And you are so right when you say the person that you hired gets indoctrinated into the culture. And what happens, they get trained, and over time, when these things go unchallenged, they seem normal. And that's where the problem starts if we don't challenge them.
It's a fact.
Jackie?
You know, Maggie's on too.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Maggie? Okay.
Yeah,
I
Maggie.
didn't see no name. I saw nothing. Maggie, okay, Maggie.
No, let Jackie go ahead. And then
Go ahead. Go ahead. You haven't said anything.
Me?
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what's the percentage of minorities on that you are over? You know, minority. What's the racial?
So get this, right? So when we came into office, you didn't have no blacks on the command staff, right? Mm-hmm. None.
I'm not surprised.
None, right? When we came in less than 2 years, we have hired 150. Of the 150 new hirees, right? Of the 150, 95 of them look like you and me.
All right.
We have placed people in positions that they've never been in before. We promoted the first Black female cap. We did that. The first Greek female captain. The first. Here's what I believe. If I don't try to change what has been going on for so many years wrong, then people wasted their vote on me. And so the number here now, it's about 60-40. It's about 60-40 now, 60-40. And the gap is closing quickly. Because you realize that you think about law enforcement across America, just forget here. Law enforcement across America is a predominantly male, white profession.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fact. And so, and then too, it's difficult to try to get a lot of young brothers and sisters don't want to come and work in law enforcement. They don't, for so many reasons, because how people have viewed, especially local law enforcement. Now, federal law enforcement, that's where they want to go. But local law enforcement, they really kind of shy away from it. But what we have done is we go to the HBCs and recruit. We have changed it and rebranded this whole agency. And by rebranding it, people want to come now where they feel they're welcome. People don't go where they know they're not welcome, where they don't feel they're going to get the first shake. And one of the things, when you come in the door downstairs, you'll see what we represent. And what's amazing to me is that people are waiting for change. I don't care where you're at. People are waiting for change. It's just that they're looking for somebody to lead them through this difficult time they're in, somebody that they can trust. And I will tell you, this ain't been no easy road. I tell my executive assistant, she's like family to me. She is family to me. I claim her anyway. I could be making more money. I've had 3 job offers since I've been here at twice what I make here, at twice. I had a job offer about $325, but I'm on an assignment. And I say that to say this is that I can't be bought. In other words, you got to put people in place that know why they're there. You know, one of the things that I touted myself on when I was running is that check my record before I got here. I didn't just show up and say, I was, in 2013, I started a Branded for Knowledge Foundation for young men and women. Basically, Google it, where we basically were teaching leadership, where we were in the schools hosting, every year we hosted the freshman tournament, where we gave the money back to the school, where we talked about the MAPS program, Men Against the Prison System. And so you check a man's record before he came to that place to where he wants your vote. And so I didn't come here looking for a job. I retired, so I was good. You know, I was good doing consulting work, traveling around the Barnes and Noble, selling my books. I was good. But when I stopped and got quiet and sat in my closet, I realized that I knew I was at the right place. I knew that God had placed me here for the right time and the right reason. I knew that. This may sound crazy, not arrogant, but I felt like I was going to win before the votes ever came back. And the confirmation that I got was I was riding down Silas Creek. Silas Creek has 2 lanes going east, 2 lanes going west. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the day of the general, it was raining on the side going east, but it was dry on the side where I had stopped to put some signs up. And I sat in the trunk of my car, well, in the hatch of my truck, and started crying. I started crying. And about that time that I started crying, this is what was crazy. About that time, the fellowship that I'm a member of Bishop Neil Ellis, who is the prelate, him and Bishop Gresham, I get a phone call at the same time that I started crying from Bishop Ellis in the Bahamas. He calling me in the States to tell me, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, to tell me I've been praying and God revealed it to me. You won this. And I told him, you could call him and ask him. I said, I just got the confirmation. He said, why? I said, Bishop, I'm sitting on Silas Creek Parkway headed toward Wake Forest. It's raining on the other side of the street, but it's not raining here on the side that I'm on. And I'm talking about literally the distance from here to that wall behind me. And it was amazing to me. And I know like sometimes it rains on this side of the street, you know, as a kid, I saw that. But I knew that was a confirmation to me. It wasn't raining where I was at. I started crying, I started laughing. At 6 o'clock, I was in the barbershop. I told the dude, give me a victory haircut. Get me tight and right. And I showed up the next morning at the polls, walking around shaking hands like I had already won. But I learned that from the teachings I got from the pastors that I was around. You got to walk it before you ever get there. You got to claim it before you ever have it. And that's the mindset that I live by. I don't care what I'm doing. I'm believing that we win it before we get there. And as long as I keep putting God first, as long as I keep recognizing him, I ran a campaign off of about 25, 30,000 against a guy who had close to 200,000 in a local election, right? I didn't have no money. I didn't. But I had Republicans and Democrats. We won by a landslide. And I had people tell me when I see them on the streets, I'm talking about white folk, they say, I never voted for a black man. I never voted for a Democrat. Tell me that all the time now. I have people from that I've never met in my life. And it's amazing. If you know Winston-Salem is divided by Highway 52, okay? 40 runs east and west, 52 runs north and south. Well, on the west side, you have a plethora of wealth, everything from millions to billions. And then on the east side is poverty. And I started saying, how is that happening like that? So my whole thing is, how do we bring some of that wealth over here? How do we shame people? Sometimes you have to shame people into saying, how is it that you have wealth over here, but we have illiteracy and food deserts over here? A law enforcement person, a sheriff, has to be more than a sheriff. He has to be an ambassador of goodwill. A leader has to be an ambassador of goodwill, whether it's in your wheelhouse or not. We caught so much criticism during this COVID-19. So during this COVID-19, and I'm going to be quiet, they shut the schools down. You had about 7,000 kids in this county that were not logging on, mainly Black and brown kids, mainly on the east side, right? But yet you had on the west side, you had schools being set up like with imprints. You had stay-at-home moms creating, an infrastructure. And so when I found that out, I went to some of the churches and said, hey, how can we do this? What can we do? And people started saying, well, it's going to take this to do that, to do this, to do this. So I went publicly and said, hey, I'm trying to raise funding to create schools at some of the churches so Imprint can come here, because our kids can't pay $200 a week for them to do that. We couldn't do that. And do you know that I called heat by saying either you the sheriff or you in education now? And my response was this: if we don't address some social issues, they become criminal issues. So I'm on the front end of it. And we set up, 3 schools raising, they charge us like $40,000 per school to bring 40 kids in. And we were able to raise that money in less than a week. Because what I learned is sometimes when Bobby went and said, I need your help, I'll think about it. But what's amazing when the sheriff go and say, hey, this is what we're doing, I don't need it. I need you to help these folk. It's amazing how the game changes. So if I don't use my influence for good to help people that are suffering, they'll give hope to the hopeless, love to the loveless, then I was in vain. All I ask God is guide me. What am I supposed to do? All I want is 2 terms, and I'm out. I'm gonna pass it to the next guy. And that's all I'm trying to do is his work here. This ain't about me.
Jackie, what we're gonna do now with the last few minutes, I want everybody to just thank Bobby for being here. Jackie, let's start with you. Then I'll come with Chris, and then of course Juanita, and we'll see how much time we got. Okay, Jackie, you there?
Yes, Sheriff, thank you for your time. You answered the couple of questions I was going to ask. I was going to ask about COVID, and I was going to ask what you would tell people running for re-election. So you've already hit both of those for me. So I appreciate your time. And I did look up what you were doing with the officers in the schools, and the program is quite impressive and creates career paths on 2 levels for folks who want part-time work and people who want to be full service people. So I appreciate your time.
We partner with one of the universities here too as well, which I think is another thing. A law enforcement agency partner with the university. So we partner with one of the universities here to talk about creating opportunity for not only for the men and women that work here, but creating opportunity for those in the community. So we have a leadership academy that we're partnering with Carolina University here in Winston-Salem. We used to be Piedmont University, to where we will be taking young men, young women, bringing them to the school during the summer and sending them through a whole leadership academy. So when you start partnering with people outside of what you would normally partner with, that's where the magic takes place at. You know, my dad told me something that I've never forgotten. Hero. I love it. He takes care of my mother. She has Alzheimer's. He takes care of her like she's a baby. Refuses to let her go to assisted living, right? A high school diploma is all he has. Worked 2 jobs at B&G Pie Company, and RJ runs to take care of us. Love the man. There was a difficult time in our household one time. And I asked him one day when I got grown, Dad, why didn't you leave? And you know what he said to me? He says, you tell me where a man spends his time and his money, and I'll show you what he loves. And he said, no amount of money is gonna make me leave what I love. And what time I got, I'm gonna spend it with that which I love. And that's what I live by. You tell me where a politician spends his time and his money, I'll show you what he loves. How much time does he spend in your neighborhood? How much money does he spend in your community? And how I see you will determine what I do to you and for you, bottom line. So when people come and say, hey, Kimbrough, would you sign off on me to support me? Like, it's election season now. I've had everybody from the governor of this state to the attorney general of this state come and say, hey, Kimbrough, support me, publicly support me. And my answer is always the same. What you done for, if you hadn't measured up to my checklist, we can't take pictures together. We can't. I can't put you on my podcast. I can't put you on my Facebook. I can't. I don't care about this politics. I don't. I really don't. I got a whole nother life once this is over. I do. Next year, this time, I have a PhD. I might go teach school or something. I'm gonna do what's right. I'm gonna speak my truth. If they like me come 2 years from now, I'll run again. If they don't, that's fine. But they will know that he was truthful, he was transparent, he gave it to us what it was. And as long as I move like that, when I go to the barbershops and the boys see me and they say, nah, he next, I know I'm on the right track. When I go places and people that been knowing me all my life come to me and say, you know what? When Vic Johnson, who I used to pick up golf balls for, Bill tells me I'm proud of you, I'm good. Because I know Vic Johnson would slap me if I wasn't right.
That's right.
That's a fact. But hey, I love you all. And you know, if you ever need anything from me, well, you got my information, brother. Because you know what? We're in this together.
Yes, we are. And I appreciate you, man. I just want to say to my team and to my wife standing here, man, we're proud of you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Keep up the great work, Bob, and I'll be in touch.
Thank you.
All right.
Love y'all. Y'all be safe.
Okay, Gary, we're gonna go to the memorial service. Do 3 minutes on the passing of course, Daryl Pennington. I want to get that in. We lost a beautiful lady on September the 12th. She was Congressman Steny Hoyer's community guardian. I mean, Daryl, I just want to say, you know, I want to honor and celebrate her because Maggie, you, and Gary were there at the Miracle Theater on November 19th when she came out to read a proclamation to Hattie and myself from Steny Hoyer congratulating us on our work in the community. And we lost her, of course, on September the 1st. And I just want to say, you know, she was called home to be with the Lord. And Hattie, we're a team, and we're here to speak the truth on her for the last time. And on November, that we saw her at the Miracle Theater. And she came out, and she was always just a telephone call away all the time. And we're going to miss her. We're going to miss her because I have been in congressman and senator's office during my career as a youth advocate and a sports media personality. I'm talking about John Lewis, Elijah Cummings, Decatur Trotter, you name it. I've been in all those offices, and I've never seen anyone on the staff like Daryl Pennington, man. She is rare. And I just want to say, man, that to her family, to her children who came to town for the memorial service on Friday, your mother was a rare bird. And I just want to say that going out. I want to say that every black face you see is not your brother, and every white face is not your enemy. Until next Sunday at the same time, I'm Harold Bell, along with my wife, Hattie, and you can color us gone. Thank you, Gary. Great job.